Boston Bruins haven't really done much of anything after losing in the first round to the Florida Panthers and looking ahead to next season with salary cap restraints. What's the roster going to look like? I'm going to break down all the latest on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. Let's get into it, shall we?
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your day every single day. The podcast is free and available on your favorite podcast apps, as well as on YouTube. We are also on Instagram, Twitter, at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my dad jokes, hockey tweets, at ENC McLaren, although taking a bit of a Twitter break lately. Just, I don't know. That site has kind of gone off the rails, let's be honest. Now, one of my favorite hockey writers has always been Justin Bourne. I really looked up to him when he was with theScore. One of the reasons why I pursued a career there and worked there for 5 years and continued to follow his work at Sportsnet. He's even been on the podcast before. And one thing that he used to do that I really liked was this Thoughts on Thoughts column. He did that back in the Score days where he would take Elliotte Friedman's 30 thoughts back then, now 32, and would offer up his own thoughts on Elliotte's thoughts. And I thought today I would do kind of the same thing, looking at Fluto Shinzawa's article in The Athletic, what I'm hearing about the Bruins' pursuit of cap space, potential trade bait, Bergeron, Krejci, and more. And we're just going to go through this kind of point by point, and I'll offer some of my thoughts on what's going on here. He started by writing, the Bruins season ended on April 30th. Since then, they've made 3 minor transactions, signing prospects Mason Lohrei, Matthew Poitras to entry-level contracts, and extending 24-year-old goalie Brandon Bussi for 1 season at a $775,000 sum. That's a 2-way deal, I would add. The major stuff, though, could come soon. Now, yesterday, it was confirmed by the NHL that the salary cap would be $83.5 million. The Bruins have very limited cap space to work with then. Less than $5 million to add 8 players to the roster. They currently have 15 of 23 spots filled. So there's going to be some cap casualties. And there's going to be some kind of discount or entry-level guys that will jump up on the roster. Shinzawa said Don Sweeney, Evan Gold, general manager, and his assistant have been pounding the phones in pursuit of deals, according to multiple team sources. With one priority, cap flexibility. You have Jeremy Swayman, Trent Frederick, and Jacob Lauko, who are all free agents and in need of raises. An impossible task to even sign those guys with the available cap space, not to mention filling out the rest of the roster. That would bring them to 18 of 23 on the roster. So, what's coming next? First of all, it's worth noting the Bruins can exceed the cap during the offseason by 10%. That gives them some breathing room to add salary before achieving cap compliance by the start of 2023. So say they go over and then Mike Riley's still around, for example, they can bury him to begin the season to free up that cap space. But ideally, they're sending out some money out the door before, creating their final roster. The draft is next week. June 28th is the first round. which is Thursday. The second and third rounds go Friday. We know the Bruins don't have a first round pick or a second round pick. And if they want to recoup some picks before the selection process, they're going to have to get trading. So let's start with Matt Grzelcyk. Shinzawa writes, quote, Matt Grzelcyk, who's number 27 on the Athletics trade board, is the likeliest player to move. One of 5 left shot defensemen under contract, carries a 3.6875 average annual cap hit for one more season, which is a fair number given how he touches the game at both ends of the ice. The 29-year-old has higher trade value than Derek Forbort, Mike Riley, and Jakub Zboril, 3 other left shot defensemen. Hampus Lindholm has no move protection, end quote. So, if Grzelcyk ends up on the move, it remains to be seen how much cap relief he'll bring the Bruins and whether an asset will be inbound. Could it be just a salary dump? Will they have to retain anything? Even if they clear his entire AAV, it might not be enough for them to proceed with their full action plan. So say you trade Matt Grzelcyk, who still has quite a bit of value, 1 year away from free agency. He's already 29. It's kind of an early rental situation for another team, getting a very capable guy at a pretty decent cap hit. That still brings them only up to around $8.5 million in available cap space. Still not enough. They could still buy out Mike Riley, which is an option, give them cap relief for this year, but they have to take some on for the next season. Derek Forbort, 2 years older than Grzelcyk, $3 million. They could try to buy him out as well. Really, if you have a left side of Lindholm, Forbort, Zboril, not bad, a little dicey. Like I talked about the other day, they could always perhaps try to sign a guy like Oliver Ekman-Larsson on the cheap after he was bought out by the Vancouver Canucks. So according to Shinzawa, it really looks as though our boy Grzelcyk is going to be on the way out. He has the most value. It will weaken the Bruins on the back end for sure. Could very much argue that the Bruins would have beaten Florida had they decided to play him in all 7 games, or even ideally fewer games than that. He was in and out of the lineup, as was Connor Clifton. Forbort was a presence in all 7 games, and that was a mistake, and that you can kind of extrapolate that to next season and see what the end result may be. There's a couple other guys who could very well be on the move as well in Taylor Hall and Linus Ullmark. We will discuss those here in a moment. But first, a word about today's first sponsor, our friends over at Birddogs. Now, I am planning a camping trip for this weekend, and I'm bringing along a couple pairs of Birddog shorts that I was sent, as well as my Birddogs tumbler. Birddogs have the most comfortable shorts that I've ever put on my legs. They fit way better than regular shorts that have made of stiff, restricting cotton. They have a cloud knit fabric that just looks exactly like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit. They also have anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that will keep me cool and dry all day long. Now, they also have a free Yeti-style tumbler that they are including with every order. All you have to do is go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl. That's birddogs.com/lockedonnhl for a free Yeti-style tumbler that I'm going to bring along with me to put in some ice, throw in a little adult beverage. Can't wait for this weekend, and I'm looking forward to giving my Birddogs a good workout and really putting that anti-stink sweat material to the test. Birddogs.com/lockedonnhl for the best fitting, most comfortable shorts, and a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your day every single day. On Monday's episode, we will preview the NHL awards, which are taking place that night. We'll also look ahead to what's coming next week with the draft, free agency, and hopefully bring you all the latest on some moves that the Bruins perhaps have made over the weekend. Let's continue with my thoughts on Fluto Shinzawa, what he's hearing. And he continues by saying, even if the Bruins clear Grzelcyk's contract, they're still going to have to do something else. Other teams are wondering if the Bruins will put Swayman or Linus Ullmark up for sale. Ullmark does have no move protection that he'd have to waive. Swayman is a restricted free agent, and the Bruins are looking at a combined cap hit of at least $9 million for next season. That's if Swayman signs for about $4 million, which is a bit under what other guys have gotten, like Jake Ottinger, Spencer Knight, Carter Hart. Those are the comparables. He writes, an Ullmark-Swayman tandem would optimize the Bruins' chances of winning, assuming the Bruins sign the latter to a reasonable extension. Trading one of the goalies could weaken a position of strength. Trading one of them would help the Bruins achieve more advantageous cap flexibility, allow them to have a more balanced roster. The question is which goalie to move. Ullmark's the Vezina favorite, but he's 5 years older. Whether he can replicate this past season is unknown. I would probably say unlikely. If the Bruins believe Swayman is a legit ace, trading Ullmark would be the preferred transaction. Shinzawa adds Ullmark's health is also unknown. Ullmark declined to disclose the nature of his condition at season's end. Sweeney and Jim Montgomery also steer clear of Ullmark's status. End quote. I mentioned the other day he was on a Maple Leafs podcast. That was with Carter Hutton, who's a former teammate of his. There was no discussion of his health. Didn't seem to be any concern there. His aim was to replicate last season's success and to live up to the expectations that are now on him. I said earlier this week when Brandon Bussi signed, I don't think you can lean on a Swayman-Bussi partnership. Swayman still has less than 100 games of NHL experience. Bussi has yet to play in the NHL. I've talked about how the Bruins, and Shinzawa writes this, would be best served pursuing a goalie in free agency to spell Swayman, but at a cheaper rate than Ullmark. My best guess is that they keep this pairing together and look to shed cap space elsewhere because goaltending is so important. Although you can get it from anywhere, as the Vegas Golden Knights proved. Adin Hill backstopping them to a cup win. Swayman would probably give them a better return, but you'd have bigger question marks at that position long term. Ullmark would have a bigger workload. He's 29. Can he handle it? Who knows? The other possibility is to roll Ullmark and Swayman again and look elsewhere for cap relief. And I think that's probably what the Bruins would prefer to do unless they get blown away by a deal for either Swayman or Ullmark. Ullmark's value will never be higher. I'm not opposed to dealing him based on that, but they would really be weakened at that position going with Swayman and Bussi. Best case for me, they trade Ullmark, get a very good return, shed his cap space, and then sign a guy like Joonas Korpisalo. Say the Bruins, of course, have had success with Finnish goalies in the past for a couple million, ideally 2.5, half of what Ullmark is making. And really, Ullmark's not going to sustain his success from last season. Korpisalo could perform as good as he might next season, Ullmark, that is. So it's really not a net loss in the end. The Bruins have until June 30th to buy out Mike Reilly. Still need to buy out Mitchell Miller, although, as has been pointed out, that will be an additional $215,000 against the cap. Who knows if they want to do that? Could they trade him? Who knows? That would cause an uproar for sure. If they do buy O'Reilly, that's $333 against the cap this season, thousand that is. Taylor Hall, it's believed, would draw interest, but that would compromise an already sparse forward group. Brad Marchand would have to drive more offense at left wing. I mean, losing Hall would be tough for sure, but only if they use that to sign Tyler Bertuzzi would I be okay with it. He finishes that section by saying, the Bruins always knew they'd have limited options. They just thought that possessing the Stanley Cup would be worth it. And that's kind of the situation they're in. It would be so much easier to come back perhaps with a lesser roster, less expectations. If you just won a cup, it would be, a lot of people would say, okay, they won, clean their hands of this group, not clean their hands of it, but you know what I mean. Be able to more easily absorb these losses and come back with a younger group looking to the future. Since they didn't win, there's still a bit more pressure to make good on their regular season success. Before we talk about Bergeron and Krejci, Shinzawa adds Connor Clifton is expecting a bid raise. He's likely heading to the market, and he can take offers league-wide. The Bruins aren't going to be able to pay him likely the 3-year, $3 million per contract that he's going to get. So he's likely gone as well. What's the latest on Bergeron and Krejci? Well, let's talk about that here in a moment. But first, a quick word about today's other sponsor, our title sponsor. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the best ticketing app out there, and you can get all the latest deals for sports, for comedy, theater, music near you, with killer deals on last-minute tickets and the best price guarantee. Stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. We picked up tickets for Ben Harper City in Color later this summer in Toronto, got images of our seats before we bought them, came in a matter of seconds, sent right to my phone. I had to add them to my wallet, and we're good to go. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but all you have to do is create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Such a great app. Get on it today. All right, friends, let's talk about Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci. Now, Shinzawa did say that someone close to the team, actually a player, a teammate, who requested anonymity because of his respect for Bergeron and Krejci, told The Athletic, quote, he's not counting on either being back, end quote. There was a big uproar on Twitter. A lot of people saying, oh no, they're not coming back. A team, an insider said he's not coming back. They're not coming back. From my perspective, that's a perfectly natural position for this teammate to have. Heading into the offseason, preparing for next season, they're unrestricted free agents, both these guys. So you have to kind of have that mindset, that mentality that they're not coming back. The Bruins always have this next man up mentality, and you have to prepare as though they are not coming back so that you can accept whatever new role and responsibility you have on the team. Charlie Coyle, Pavel Zacha, count on them not coming back. so that you are preparing to be the top 2 centers on the team next year. Guys further down the lineup. Count on them not coming back so you can step up and embrace a more leadership role on the team. Not counting on either being back is a lot different than saying a teammate who requested anonymity said, they told me they're not coming back. Counting on them not coming back, just for me, is a natural response. That mentality, mindset, heading into this postseason, thinking, I'm going to have additional responsibilities, and let's go from there. So that's a lot different than saying they're not coming back. No, I've heard a lot of people are saying David Krejci has told people he's not coming back. I could see that. I still think Bergeron's back, but Krejci is not. And I mentioned the awards earlier. It's likely that Bergeron comes back because he's still a very high-end player. He's still so good, and he's going to win, likely, the Selke Trophy. I understand he doesn't want to go out kind of fading, but if you're still the best two-way player in the game, the Bruins are celebrating their centennial. Why not come back and give it one more go? That's just my take. I think he will be back. As far as if they don't come back, the Bruins will be relying, and even so, they're going to be relying on a bunch of guys on kind of entry-level deals or RFA deals to round out the roster. Mark McLaughlin, John Beecher, Georgi Merkulov, Fabian Lysell, perhaps. And Shinzawa had an article even this morning listing a bunch of guys that they might need to rely on, prospects that they might need to rely on because of the limited cap space. Beecher, Bussy perhaps, Lauko for sure, Lysell, McLaughlin, Zboril, Steen I think will be up for sure. They'll still be a competitive team. They're going to be giving some young guys some more looks, and it could work out for the best in the end. But that's contingent on Bergeron coming back. Any success they're going to have next season requires him to be on the team. If he's not there, then it could be a very different story for the Bruins. And I do expect him to be back. Not insider info, just my sense. Anyways, that is the latest on the Boston Bruins as I record here on Friday morning. Not seeing any breaking news that has come out in the meantime. So that's the latest as of 10 a.m. here on Friday morning as I record. Like I said, I'm going to be camping this weekend. If anything huge breaks, probably won't be able to drop a video, but if it's huge, then I'll try, certainly. And again, be back on Monday to preview the NHL awards, look ahead to the week, and talk about all the latest on the Boston Bruins, because that is what we are all about here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Have a great weekend, friends. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you again here next week.